The energy transition, ladies and gentlemen, is key to mitigating climate change. There's no doubt about that. But the transition itself has turned out to be a more nuanced concept. Much more nuanced than some have expected, and not as simple as many have previously thought, but rather very complex and multifaceted. The world is currently witnessing this complexity firsthand, with crunches in certain areas of the energy markets and soaring prices throughout. The events of the past year or so have highlighted the risks associated with detaching energy sustainability from energy security and energy affordability. Consequently, policymakers will need to take all of these matters and all of these intertwining concerns and plan accordingly. It's a difficult task, and balancing these are like juggling hot potatoes at times, but they have to do it. And policymakers have to face these matters strategically, holistically addressing them, not by piecemeal, nor in disconnected efforts. So, is the world now evolving a new way of thinking about energy sustainability? Is there a fresh approach or a new attitude? If someone can sense the winds of change, it's definitely one of the most seasoned energy policymakers around, none other than Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman. Your Royal Highness, are the trade-offs between energy sustainability, energy affordability, and energy security, are they real or are they perceived? Can the world balance all of these three issues simultaneously, or will these priorities continuously change depending on the political climate of the day?
No, I don't think so. I have always and will continue to say it. Energy security is a must. It's the main pillar of how you can manage sustainable energy. Without energy security is something I cannot expect to be in any time of the day a reality. I also believe in economic growth, and you would see that fundamentally that energy security is a main pillar for that. And I also believe that if we don't have energy security and if we don't have economic prosperity, growth, and what have you, I don't think that you will be able to meet the sustainability goals, including attending to climate change. These three things should not be compromised, and they should be attended to accumulative, as a trio. I don't think the world can afford getting into a zero-sum game in attending to these three issues. However, I maintain that energy security is more supreme.
Is more supreme.
Absolutely.
And is this what we're seeing now in Europe, these geopolitical events in Europe and the reactions to it? Some people and analysts are wondering whether these latest developments, would it usher a quicker pace for energy transition towards cleaner energies, or will it hinder it in the medium term? What's your view, Your Highness?
No, I think it just provided everybody with a reality check. Basically, it's a reality check of how aspirations, be it good aspiration or decent aspiration or not, how it can be compromised by realities of the realities of the day. Now, crisis and what have you can bring much more emphasis and much more focus. But even before the recent crisis, you still had a big arguments ever since May last year, when that so-called, I still call it La La Land scenario on net zero, had been smacked with so many realities. One of them is cost. We are probably here with the right audience. Aviation is an industry, both being the manufacturers of airplanes, or the service providers. I cannot think of an industry that went through havoc over the last 50 years. in trying to survive, in trying to be competitive, and live up to the expectation of the essential service provisions upon which they could make a living and upon which they could survive.
A very cost-sensitive industry indeed.
It is. This industry went through the whole book, including cutthroat competition, all the way to the essence of surviving, including mergers, and including acquisition, including vanishing. I still remember, I would call myself one of the senior citizens, the famous Pan American building in New York. You don't see it anymore. You don't see so many of these airlines, simply because they did not forfeit themselves with the first and foremost being equipped with attending to reality and ensuring that they could survive. The way we see it as a fuel provider ourselves and contributing to the notion of energy security as a pillar, as a main pillar of this industry, is that we have been working with the industry just to make sure, and we've been working with our friends from the Ministry of Transportation on being a solution provider as opposed to being, the way we do it is we're looking at it holistically. In fact, you'll be amazed that, and I'm sure some of you here will be amazed to realize that we are working in all of the above type of approach. So just, if you don't mind, just give me quick examples.
Please.
And by the way, let's put things in perspective. Aviation contribute to nothing more than 2% of the entire emissions of today. Be it as it may, be it small or big, I think the whole world congregated on the idea that we should try to provide solutions to emission reductions for all sectors, of which we are, I think, in agreement with, simply because, again, it fits our holistic approach. That our holistic approach in terms of emissions, we want to reach out to all sectors, to all greenhouse gases, and using every tool in our kit. Even if that tool in the kits are not available, we should work hard with others to provide these tools that would enable us in the future to move forward.
Your Royal Highness, is one of the tools in the kit the circular carbon economy, which your ministry oversaw the design and which was actually adopted by the G20 in the year 2020. What lessons learned can be used here in the kingdom and globally in order to further the sustainability of the numerous sectors, not least the aviation sector?
Very funny, it's in this very room and chamber, I did put together that idea in November 2019. And to some of the audience, I sounded like as an alien coming with this fancy idea here and there. But as you have rightly said, Nasser, it's been accepted, approved by the G20, and we made it a way of our life in the ecosystem, as energy ecosystem. So even with this issue of the aviation, we are also profoundly looking at it from a circular carbon economy approach. We're reaching out to all of these components. Now, knowing the history of both, and we're looking at both, we're talking about the manufacturer of the planes and the service providers of traveling. If you want to address the future requirement of the energy sector for that aviation sector at both industries, the service provider and the manufacturer, you have to look at holistically at 5 different things. you have to look at the body or the fuselage of the plane and how you could help in bringing more material, different materials to reduce the weight of the plane. The reduction of the weight of the plane help. In fact, not only helps in terms of reducing consumption of energy, but also help in improving the aerodynamics of the plane, which subsequently also helps in reducing emissions.
Fuel efficiency and emissions.
Fuel efficiency and therefore emissions. There is also a challenge on engine and engine efficiency. I have to say that this industry has been self-motivated with this environment that they had to survive with, that they had to be efficient at all levels, including the manufacturer of planes had to work very hard, laboriously hard, to provide engines that are more efficient and therefore can reduce costs, and therefore they as a manufacturer will be better fitted to be chosen by airlines to procure their planes from. So there is the self-motivation element, plus the airline industry was also self-motivated to go for which of these planes that they would include in their fleet to ensure that they continue to be cost-effective and competitive. That's why we are working, and that's why we had this so-called, keep in mind that from 60s until today, I think the number is 80% of emission reductions.
Mm-hmm. And that's purely driven by just the bottom line and lowering costs.
And more into efficiency of the engine, efficiency of the materials that are used. This is a continuous challenge and will continue with us. And keep in mind that the service use and of flying had also increased in terms of size of traveling per hour. All of these things had increased, and yet you managed 80% reduction of emissions.
But Your Highness, will the self-motivation continue to do its work for the aviation industry when we're talking about new fuels, sustainable aviation fuels, maybe using different engines, working on the hydrogen gas? Some people say that the costs are too great. We're not going to see this in this coming decade.
No, I think that there is another added pressuring element, which is public pressure. It's not a state secret that people are conscious of what they're doing and what they're consuming, including traveling. It's a consumption component. And people are making a choice today, which is that we wouldn't like to even travel with a less carbon footprint. And therefore, we have to work with the industry, and that's why we have a program called Sustainability. We're working both ends. We're working with the manufacturer on engines. We're working with them on material. And that's why, SABIC has been engaged with so many manufacturers, both on fiber and carbon fiber and polymer. We believe that this had the more use of polymers and carbon fiber will continue improving weight. Keep in mind that we had like a 53% reduction of weights and what have you as a result of just internal components. That's why we believe also that we are also working on the fuel, aviation fuel, and we believe strongly that low carbon fuel, aviation fuel, is going to be the transitionary fuel for the future.
So low carbon, not zero carbon.
It will be low carbon. We have to be, again, this is the difference between La La Land and reality. It has to be a low carbon, How you get low carbon? Still, within the constraint, as you have rightly said, on the carbon, in the circular carbon economy. What we're doing is that we're getting to the source itself, which is the refinery itself, by building the carbon sequestration component. And that component will mitigate emissions from the source, which is the refinery, plus the collected CO2. Believe it or not, you could create some more synthetic fuel out of it. So it's not going to be...
From the carbon, to use it in sustainable...
So it's not going to go to waste. And in this room, Saleh had gone, I did mention it, and we'll repeat it. We're going to do it the Qasimi way, which is... We will never leave any single molecule not to be used. This is not a frugal approach, it is the circular carbon economy approach. Synthetic fuels will come out of the CO2 that is collected. I await to see how biofuels will deliver us, because in all the literature we reviewed, I think it's only 1% will constitute of biofuels being utilized by 2030. But we're not saying no biofuels, but we see these things will evolve over a much longer time span, because they're going through their challenges, the challenges of their own, including hydrogen, by the way. But we are also engaged in hydrogen. And funny enough, which is something I would say with pride, that the manufacture of biofuel in the UK is no other than a company, a Saudi company called Al Fanar. So we're there. We'll be doing all of the above. Again, I keep repeating for everybody, trust me on this one. We are not in a juncture where we are into a cherry-picking approach. We have to look at all of the above, and we have to be very mindful and effective in attending to sustainability goals, but not to go in through that. You will never deliver that with the so-called cherry-picking approach. You cannot make a preconceived conclusion today and say, I will do this and that, but I will never allow, it's almost like wearing a blinder. You've got quite a few choices, and you should look at all the choices that may, including, by the way, working hard on land and aviation operations, which again, that will give you the little contribution here, including greening airports. And by that, you could use electrical cars, you could use even greening airports by itself. Every molecule that you, or every component that you could enhance in this holistic approach, which is the circular carbon economy approach, can deliver us some more. So we are not in competition with biofuels. We're saying all of the above will be required. And over time, I'll give you statistics, and I'm not the expert, but even in Saudi Arabia, it is in the vision of Saudi Arabia that probably traveling within Saudi Arabia will probably grow 2 to 3 folds by 2030. And we have our own green initiative, and we have our Middle East green initiative, and certainly we have a commitment that we are discharging as we speak on the form of our national determined NDCs, and we have a target to achieve. So with all of the above, we are also acting as a good citizen, global citizen, and we want to achieve these goals, yet we taking it an extra step by being part of the solution or the provider of solutions as opposed to be the cause of the problem.
Finally, Your Highness, and I think we just have a minute left, we know that emissions is a great challenge to all economic sectors and also for the aviation sector. But in the climate policy sphere, most attention in recent years have been directed towards the suppression of hydrocarbon supply. This has led to underinvestment and what we today see are the ramifications of in markets everywhere. Now, some people are saying, let's focus on restricting hydrocarbon demand. Do you think there are limitations to or risks associated with such a shift in policy?
Well, what you see today is a reality that people should not forfeit. I mean, you could always put your hands and say, I don't see it. But all what happened over the last 2 years, since the commencement of the endemic or pandemic, is a reduction of investment, a reduction of all of the above. And look at the result. What is surfacing now for everybody is the wrong market signals that inhibited people to invest. And by the way, you know, I could see it coming in aviation too, because let's not forget that 2 million barrels of consumption has not been achieved yet because of lack of traveling and
from jet fuel
in particular. Can you imagine what would happen if people go back to a state of normalcy and traveling go back to where it was? So that will add another additional challenge to how to provide fuel today. As we speak today, check it out, Nasser. And I would ask our friends here to check it out. Look at oil prices today, crude prices. Look at what's happening to jet fuels in the US, in Europe. In some cases, or for that matter, talking about diesel or gasoline, it's all mobility. All mobility fuels have skyrocketed. If people are complaining about crude prices, they should check how much it is costing to fill a plane in the States, in Europe, and elsewhere. It's not a peculiar situation on a specific zone or a specific country. And the gap between crude oil prices and these products, in some cases, is actually 60%.
Yeah, the crack spread is enormous.
Why? Because there is lack of refining capacity. Why? Because of market signal. See, this is an industry, energy, aviation, plane manufacturers. It is all about signals. If the signals of the market are not conducive, people would refrain from investing. If people refrain from investing, there is a consequence to that. And that consequence will emerge in the form of lack of available supply. That lack of available supply will transform itself into being inflationary or into a severe competition of how, as a final consumer, will get to from one point to the other and not to be paying a dearer and more expensive price.
Well, let's hope now the market signals that you've mentioned have been remedied, at least for the short to medium term. I thank you very much, Your Royal Highness, for joining us today and shedding a light on this nexus between energy and the aviation industry. Please give a hand to His Royal Highness Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman.